all of my time bullying the American people. Empower yourself by voting for the National Initiative. And if you didn't do it within 6 months, I'd quit. I want to be your president. Screw you. If you don't want to, I'd quit. I just quit. You know, it's your country. You want to go to hell, that's your problem. I'll provide leadership for a period of time, but if you don't want to shape up, there's nothing I can do about it. That's the first thing I do. Second thing I do is, obviously, with all these changes I want to make in corporate America, they're going to really come at me. And I'm going to keep them so busy they won't have any time. I'm going to turn around 90% of what the government holds secret should not be. I'm going to turn over all the apple carts. You wonder about 9/11? I mean, it's all going to be turned over. I'm going to have a commission. It's going to have subpoena power. It's going to have everybody comes before it is going to have to take the oath. And it's going to start with George Bush, second Bill Cheney, and all the way down the line. All the way down the line. And anybody who's committed a crime, president on down, go to jail, prosecute. And all the thievery that's been going on, and I got to tell you, they've been brazen because they know there's no way you're ever going to catch them. But I'll tell you what, when we turn over the garbage can, and you see what they've been doing to you, yeah, we'll be loading here. I'll be emptying the prisons out of drug people, but we'll be loading it up with all these white cars. Right? Please. Okay. Those are the two things I'd do. Now, the next thing I'd do is I would push very hard to change our system of taxation so that we have a retail sales tax.
No IRS?
No IRS.
Talk about a little bit about the tax.
Okay, you want to hear this? This is selfish. Okay. This disturbs the liberals. I have a touch of libertarianism in me. I have a touch of conservative, you name it. I'm a radical liberal in many respects. The first task of government, in order to exist, is the tax. Otherwise, it can't exist. Now, if the government raises revenue unfairly, then the people have no respect for the government. They don't want to pay their taxes. And you got a bad scene. And they know that when the money that's being raised is not going to be spent fairly. That's what we have today. That's why people don't want to pay taxes. That's why people don't respect the government. Now, there's only basically two forms of taxation that are progressive. Progressive. One is the income tax. The more you earn, the more you pay. And the retail sales tax. Now, people have said that that's not progressive. They're wrong. The retail sales tax is progressive. The more you spend, the more you pay. So if you spend $1,000 for a car and you pay 10%, it's there. If you pay $100,000 for the car, you're paying more. So that's progressive. So they're both progressive. Now what's happened to now, mind you now, this is not just off the top of my head. I've served 8 years on the Senate Finance Committee. Okay? So now if you take the tax system the way we have it, it's been corrupted by wealth. Wealth has been smart enough to figure out how to stick it to the average citizen. And so we have today 70% of Americans are the ones that pay the FICA tax. That's Social Security and health taxes. 70%. The most regressive part of the income tax system is where 70% of Americans pay taxes. So, and then poor people get nothing. It's the best you got is an earned income credit. So but you got to have income. No income, you got nothing. So now that's the system we have today. And then in addition, we tax corporations. Now people say, well, and of course it's great in Congress, let's sock it to the corporations. Corporations are real simple. This is economics 101. You've all had this. You take a corporate entity, they pick up a resource, they add labor and to process the resource. So you have the cost of resource, cost of labor. You got to make a profit to survive. So now you add the cost of profit. The government taxes you, you add the cost of taxes, and so you take your product and you sell it to the consumer. The consumer winds up paying for the resource, the labor, the profit, and of course the tax. So who pays the taxes in our corporate society? Obviously, it's the consumer. And so when people say single payer, they're only talking about one human being. That is the taxpayer and the consumer. There's nobody else. The government doesn't pay. The corporations don't pay. It's the human being that pays, and that's the consumer, and that's the taxpayer. So now, if you want to have a fair system of taxation, the first thing you got to do is have transparency. I got to know what you're paying, you got to know what I'm paying, you got to know what that person's paying. So the only way you can do that is with a system where there are no exceptions. Because the minute you have exceptions, I hire my lobbyist to go get my break to screw you. And so that's the system we have. We've got 30,000 lobbyists. Their first job is to make sure that their clients get a good tax break. The code stands that high. I've got to tell you, having served on that committee for 8 years, there's not a human being alive that understands the whole code. Not a human being alive. And nobody in the IRS. Everybody understands their own little niche, but that's it. So now, if we have a retail sales tax, we now know what it is. Whatever it is, you're paying it, I'm paying it. Now, this table, that computer, they all have about 23% income taxes built into it. The cost of the wood, the processing, the whole thing, 23%. So if we're now going to cut out the income tax, that means that the new product is going to be 23% cheaper. So we could add 23% sales tax, and you're even. You have not benefited one way or the other. You haven't lost, but you haven't benefited. So the object of this exercise is to have not up or down, just to change it from a where there's no where you can't see anything to where you can see everything. And that's what we do. So now we have a retail sales tax that's 23%. Now what's the effect of that? Well, it means that for the average citizen, though, we have the essentials of life: food, lodging, clothing, transportation. So what about those? Well, obviously the average citizen pays more for that than the wealthy, even though the wealthy may be eating caviar. But still, so what we got to do is got to give them a break. So we can determine what the tax will be, what that 23% is of lodging, of food, of medicine, and we can turn around and have the Social Security Department send you a check at the beginning of every month for the amount of tax you will be paying for the essentials. And so lo and behold, you now get a check of anywhere from $300 to $500 a month to pay for the taxes you will be spending on the essentials of life. Now what does this mean for a poor person? Very substantial. Now, Mindy, are you listening to this? Because I'm not going to repeat it.
I'm going to watch it again.
Okay. So now what it means is that you will be, a poor person doesn't have the money to buy the essentials of life, but that person's going to now have a cash flow to pay the taxes that he could. So he's going to have money that wouldn't be getting at all. Now that's very significant and very, very just. So now what do we do? That's what on the individual, but what happens in the macro terms? First off, what it does, it changes our society from a consumption society to a savings society. Look at what's happening today. We're going to have a stimulus for our economy, which is in the difficulties. Our economy is in difficulty because we're spending more money than we earn. So we're going to give you more money to spend, and you're going to spend it, and so the stimulus is going to go to China. And we're going to go into debt. So who's going to pay the debt? You are. I'm not. I'm too old. You're going to pay the debt. So now, what does our tax system do in addition to that? It's a transfer from you, the young people, to the old people. Because you see, the young people, you're going to live on wages. So your wages are taxed at the rate of 35 to 47%. Old people, they're clipping coupons. So the best they're taxed at is 15%. So we're ripping it right out of your pockets and giving it to old people. You like that. I know you like that. Because obviously, if you didn't like it, you'd be working to change the tax system. But you're not doing anything to change the tax system. So now, let me tell you another thing to tell you how bad it is. If you've never heard the terminology in economics called proportionality. I know you've all heard about it, but I'll repeat it for you. Proportionality is when everything is taxed. Now, you may not be aware, wealth is not taxed in our society. We don't tax wealth.